Start the recording here. All right. So last time, we talked about, Krishna's purpose for existing. Because Prabhupada says in his lectures, early lectures, he mentions how Krishna was one and he became many. And the reason he did that is for his bliss, his greatest happiness. And we found out, that his greatest happiness is this special kind of love called prema. So it's a bit different love than we're used to experiencing here. It's an extremely powerful, kind of all-encompassing feeling of both joy and the desire to make the other happy. Generally, in our lives, love has a little bit of a dual nature. We may want to make the other appreciate the other and want to make them happy, but we also want to be happy ourselves. And just by the existence of the other in this dimension of prema, um, uh, both sides are super saturated with happiness and simply focused on the other ones. It makes them come alive, actually. I mean, I don't know if we've had the experience that make you feel just more alive than any other time. This is what happened. They're continually becoming more enlivened. And so that's Krishna's purpose, is to have this divine love. And so, we as persons interested in bhakti or devotional service, and I'm going to say that, what does Krishna really want from us? Right? Because we have different things that we do in order to please Krishna: hearing, chanting, remembering, doing various types of service. So what is Krishna really looking for from us? What is the way that what is the thing that Krishna desires? And I'm going to say today that he wants our hearts. And by way of looking at that, I'm going to start here with verse 7:16 from Bhagavad Gita. It says, "O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute." And and Prabhupada says in the purport, he says, "These persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service under different conditions. They are not pure devotees because they have some aspiration to fulfill in exchange for devotional service." So they want something from Krishna, and they have some faith that Krishna can help them. So there's a motivation there, personal desire. And then Prabhupada says, when these 4 kinds of persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service and are completely purified by the association of a pure devotee, they also become pure devotees. So that Prabhupada is making this distinction between mixed and pure devotion. But it's interesting. I'm using commentary from one of our great acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, because he really kind of digs deep into it. And he says the first 3 are called karma, mishra, bhakti. Mishra means to be mixed with. And so they're asking for something material, karma. And it says, and it's called sakama, or bhakti with desires. Right? Like Prabhupada said, they have some motivation, some desire to fulfill. And I'm saying this to show a couple of things. First of all, the different ways we can approach Krishna, and how sweet and wonderful Krishna is, regardless of our approach to him. And so he says, the result of this bhakti is attainment of the respective desires, deliverance from suffering, attainment of scriptural knowledge, and gain of material benefits. And he says, and after that, because the superior nature of their object of worship, Krishna, those devotees attain liberation in the form of Salokya, attaining the same planet of the Lord, with predominance of happiness and powers. So it says, first of all, Krishna gives them what they ask for. Those things, if he fulfills their desires, but because he's so kind, he gives them far more than they even desired. And I think that this shows the nature of Krishna's heart. So he says after that, he takes them to the spiritual world on the same planet where he lives. But he says and he says with predominance of happiness and power. So they don't have a close connection with Krishna. They don't have this prema, right? But they're in it's a eternal place of happiness and bliss of a kind, right? But it doesn't have this prema. It doesn't have a deep connection with Krishna takes them there just because they approached him. I mean, you can understand if somebody comes to us and does something for us, and we know that they're doing it just because they want something, we don't generally take that kind of a connection very seriously. But Krishna, because he cares for us so much, and he doesn't mind, and so he gives them far more than they desired. But they don't they're not on the track because they don't want a close connection with Krishna. They want something from him. They don't get to have prema. But still, it's more than they ever. And he says, and there is no fall down, as in the case of exhausting enjoyment in swarga as a result of. It says like when we have a lot of punya karma, pious activities, we can go to the places where the devas live, Indra and Chandra and these people. That's swarga, and that lasts as long as the karma lasts, and so people then come back down to earth. So he says this is a permanent elevation to the spiritual world happens just from this, even from the devotional service that just wants something from Krishna, doesn't care so much about him. You just think of him as somebody. Prabhupada even uses the word sometimes, thinks of Krishna as your order supplier who can fulfill your desires. And so Krishna is so kind. And then he says the result of Jnana Mishra Bhakta, this is the fourth one, the Jnani, which is superior to others, is Shantarati or Bhava. So they have the beginnings of love for Krishna. But it's the beginning, the immature love of Krishna, but it's in Shanta, which means there's a distance that they understand deeply who Krishna is supreme and superior to them, and so they keep a respectful distance. They tend to meditate on him, or they see him from a distance. There's not that prema. There's bhava, a beginning of love, but there's not an interchange, because they're very powerfully they're seeing how God is all powerful and so much greater than them. That's a real focus for them. They haven't connected with Krishna in sweetness. And so we're going to see if we want to connect on this path towards this divine love, we have to connect with Krishna's sweetness. It's important for us now to understand who Krishna is and that he's all powerful and the supreme controller, but we need to begin to engage with his sweetness and not just his power, his majesty, his Aishvarya. And so these other persons who have some greater knowledge of Krishna, they just have the idea of his power. And so that causes them to take a respectful distance. And so they really think he's wonderful, and they have a kind of an immature type of love. Bhava, when if somebody is on the path of sweetness, right, bhava is the beginning of love that matures into prema. That's just for them, that's their destination. They have this bhava, they have strong feelings for him, but they have a very, very respectful distance. And so there's not a way to do that, to move on generally. And then here he talks about, he says the result of pure bhakti, okay, unmixed with either the jnana, karma, or yoga, is called ananya bhakti, akinchana bhakti, or uttama bhakti, which has many types. Is that one becomes an associate of the Lord with in the mood of servitorship, friendship, parent, or a lover. So it says when we approach Krishna without the other motivations, then we can be closely connected with Krishna in these various relationships. These are all prema and Madhurya prema, all these different kinds of prema. And so if we want to connect with Krishna in this relationship that he sees as his ultimate expression, then we have to We have to have a certain orientation ourselves. Otherwise, we'll get something non wonderful. Any connection with Krishna produces wonderful results, but this prema is indescribable. So he makes that distinction. That if we're, and so here also, I guess, oftentimes we in our spiritual society, we stress different types of services that we can perform. There's this, Prabhupada calls it, devotional service. And so we often do things for Krishna in our spiritual practice. And I think many times we can be caught up in that, doing this kind of service. You may have deities in your house and you serve them. You may come to the temple and serve deities. Some people, people cook for Krishna, they clean for Krishna. There's various different types of outreach activities that people can do. And so sometimes we look at the actual physical side of things. And here in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is again beginning to emphasize the heart. And so we have to make sure, if we want to move on the path towards prema, that we don't forget the heart. Sometimes we think, okay, I'm doing this much service, that much service, doing these kind of things. I'm really occupying my time, and therefore this is a great thing. But are we taking care to look at our hearts? And so here it says here in Bhagavad Gita 9:26, if one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. So you'll notice here that the offerings are not anything special. Prabhupada mentions that anybody can do it, but they're, a leaf, a flower, fruit, a little water, pretty typical things. They're not anything extraordinary. And so what you can see here, and Prabhupada mentioned in his purport, he says, Krishna wants only loving service and nothing more. Krishna accepts even a little flower from his pure devotee. He does not want any kind of offering from a non-devotee. He is not in need of anything from anyone because he is self-sufficient, and yet he accepts the offering of his devotee in an exchange of love and affection. And so I really think a lot of times in our ISKCON society, we understress here the devotion part of devotional service. And we maximize the value of the actions, because bhakti, that's why, there's a reason why Prabhupada uses the word devotional service rather than just service, because there's the mood there. The mood of devotion. The service is the action. In Sanskrit, it's anukulyena krishnanushilanam. The shilana means an action directed towards Krishna. And the anukulyena is the attitude we have towards him. We can't have love to begin with, but at least that appreciation for him, a good feeling for him, an interest, something. So that's the devotional part. And you can't separate the two. You can do so many different things, perform so many actions and services, and Krishna will appreciate them. As we saw, even somebody that wants something is doing that just because they want something from Krishna. Krishna rewards far more than they deserve. But if we're interested in trying to tread the path that leads to prema, right, then we have to begin to emphasize a lot more. Just in our society, people will ask you, what you're doing in terms of service. How are you chanting? How are you, what kind of services are you doing? Are you studying? And rarely do we talk about, what do you feel about Krishna? What's the status of your devotion? So it's not so common. It's because we have a tendency to confuse just service or action with devotional service. And we don't spend much time thinking about the heart. And it's clear that that's what Krishna really wants. Even if what's being offered is not so great, if it's done with some devotion, some appreciation, then Krishna really enjoys that. Because again, he's looking for a heart connection. He's looking for this love. ultimately. And so this is something that we kind of have to, in my understanding, we have to get on board this, as early as we possibly can. We really should consider the different options. And if we decide that this is really the thing that really appeals to us, that we want to take up the invitation that Krishna is bringing us, especially with, we have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we're followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who came particularly to offer that special sweet type of bhakti, where that leads us to prema. When Krishna comes personally, that's what he's showing. Because there are so many different avatars of Krishna, but it's only Krishna has that special thing, and Lord Chaitanya is spreading that. So if we want that, we have to understand that there's got to be a cultivation of the heart, because ultimately that's what Krishna wants from us. And somehow I don't think we emphasize that enough. That people will even work very hard and even harden their hearts because I think they have to do more service. I have to do more service. I have to do more service. And we tend to praise people for that. Oh, they do so much service, but we don't ask people, how do you feel with that service? What is the status of your heart? And I ran across this Ananda Mai, who's here. She sent me this for another purpose, but this verse is very beautiful. It's a little part of the Nectar of Devotion. This last week, I guess Krishna's arrangement, it was very useful that it popped up that way. I was using her as an instrument here. It says that this is from the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 11. The Naradiya Purana, in the Naradiya Purana, there is a statement of how this servitorship is transcendental. It is said there that a person who is constantly engaged in devotional service by his body, mind, and words, or even a person who is not practically engaged, but is simply desiring to do so, is considered to be liberated. And to my mind, again, that emphasizes the attitude. It emphasizes the desire. So if somebody is actually acting, and it presupposes if somebody is acting, with body, minds, and words, constantly engaged, anushilanam, with their body, mind, and words. It's also they're doing it because they have an intense desire, because of a deep connection with Krishna. And so even if somebody just has the desire and they've not come to the stage where they can really express it all the time, Krishna's appreciating that desire because there's a good feeling for Krishna there. So it's a real emphasis on what is our desire, what is our connection with Krishna. It's really powerful. He says, even if because Prabhupada said above, Krishna is self-sufficient. He doesn't need. It's the way I understand it. The devotees who really have a real feeling for Krishna, their service is meant to come. Probably we're going to talk about that, come spontaneously. And so it actually is not so much like it's more important to them than it is to Krishna. Like they have to do something because their heart is overflowing. Sometimes you just need to do something. It satisfies their love. And there's some place where Prabhupada uses that for the satisfaction of their love, they act. They're feeling some gratitude, appreciation, affection for Krishna, and therefore you need to express it. It's a natural thing to express it. And so that's of course coming at a little bit higher stage. But that should happen if we start to feel something. We want to connect somehow. We want to chant Krishna's name. We want to hear about him. We want to do something. And so oftentimes we're thinking if we do a lot of stuff, then that stuff will come. And I don't think it just comes naturally unless we're thinking about the heart. Because what happens, I think all too often in our ISKCON society is that we get focused on the head and learning lots of information. And we're going to talk about this in the next two sessions. We're going to try to talk about how we can begin to go down that path. From the very beginning, because we don't have love now. How can we begin to cultivate the heart? But I think we have a tendency to cultivate the head and absorb a lot of information, useful information, and be able to connect the dots and understand the teachings. And then we, harness the body for doing physical services. And sometimes and kind of neglect the part that Krishna wants, which is the heart and the emotions and everything. So we're gonna talk a lot about that the next two times. But what I really want to emphasize this time is that that we need to stop and think about why we're serving Krishna or why we're interested in Krishna, depending on what our situation is. That what is it? Why are we doing this? And how do we understand Krishna? Like we have to take a little time for that and spend some energy in that and really look at ourselves, And we see, whatever reason works out to our benefit. But if we're persuaded by the vast superiority of the path to prema, then we have to adjust ourselves accordingly. We just have to. We have to give some thought to that. And so we have to think about, why am I doing it? Because we may do it. Well, it's a good thing to do. We may be persuaded that serving Krishna is the best activity for human beings. It's going to produce us. Prabhupada gives us the motivation many times of taking ourselves from being having a temporary life, he says, of ignorance and unpleasantness. He says to an eternal life of bliss and wisdom and knowledge. Yeah. But that's coming from that's being achieved even by the Karma Mishra Bhaktas, where they go on the same planet. And so it's an upgrade. And it's certainly worth our while to serve Krishna for that purpose, if we want to do that. But if we're persuaded by this special type of love where Krishna, he appears in his fullness, this is him enjoying his life, living his real life, and we can be part of that, then we have to really examine ourselves. What are we looking for? There's never any harm in approaching Krishna. But if we do that, we have to be a little bit introspective and see, why am I doing what I'm doing? What do I think about Krishna? What do I feel about him, really? What is my attraction? Not just what am I doing? And bring that in. And I think if we hear about Krishna and chant about him and meditate a little bit on that, we'll find that that Krishna is really amazing. And we can begin to think that that Krishna is worth everything. But we'll talk about that in some, try to do it in some detail to give you some thoughts on that in the next two sessions. But I really think here I just really want to establish that Krishna's looking for our feelings, and by chanting and hearing and doing the various angas, the limbs of bhakti, different characters of bhakti, we can connect with Krishna also. Like I think many times we get some, we call it the higher taste. Prabhupada did that. The experience of something higher is the in the Gita. It's what is it? The experience of something higher. What is it? That's really how it translates. Prabhupada kind of, there's a poetic translation because it's talking about having taste or rasa before, but then it says there's this being able to see something higher, seeing something, so which it can be generalized to experiencing something higher. So sometimes if there's Vidagdha was talking, last week about how sometimes you can have a large kirtan and how that can be such a wonderful experience. But we can look at that in a different way. We can become kind of pleasure seekers, and that this was fun. Oh, this was a great festival. This was a great kirtan. This was a great experience, and simply want to repeat the experience. Or we can say, I got a little bit of a connection with Krishna. I got a little bit of an experience of him. and not worry so much about always being in a blissful state. But this was an experience of Krishna, a little tiny hint of him, and look what it did for me. Right. So those things I think should change our attitude towards Krishna when we see these things. When we come and the deities are so beautiful, or we chant and we feel something, chant and be happy. But being happy isn't, I mean, that's good. If you're happy and that, all those things are good. But do we stop then and say, wow, this was an actual experience of Krishna to some degree that just transformed me. And then we can just try to extrapolate and say, what would a greater experience be, or what a full scale one would be. And so that would deepen our faith to pursue this path of the heart, and it should touch our hearts. So sometimes I think we confuse spiritual advancement with just being happy and having these joyful experiences. And actually, I mean, I think they're really meant to deepen our affection for Krishna, to have him, because it's conceptual for us now. I'm explaining to you, and it's conceptual for me. I experienced this prema. I've heard descriptions and these sorts of things. So it's kind of conceptual. But when we begin to do things that make us feel a connection, even though it's a small one, it should deepen our faith and go, wow, like what if this is magnified, trillions of times? That's really what it's like. We had a beautiful experience, and a wonderful festival, or a wonderful feast, or wonderful association that enlivened us. It's just a little experience of Krishna, you know. We have a festival, where wonderful things are happening, or um, I was talking to Eric, who was here, and he was mentioning how last year in his local center, they had this wonderful Gora Purnima celebration, and he and his even especially his wife Kish, they found the joys and the glories of Charanamrita, the things that bathe the deities, So that's a little taste of Krishna, you know so it doesn't just remain conceptual, but it becomes something a little bit, slightly somewhat experienced. And if we understand that that's just a little tiny drop, and we think, wow, we at least have something to base it on. So to me, the notion of traveling this path means some, regular, maintenance on our on our feelings for Krishna. And because sometimes if we especially if we're doing some kind of intense sadhana or practice, sometimes we'll find ourselves struggling to do all the things we're supposed to do. And if we're not careful with that, that'll close off the heart, because we'll just kind of double down and be determined to get all these things done. Or we think we should increase our services, and that actually can close the heart off, because we're just, okay, I just need to get this done, when actually, the heart actually should start to become a motivating force. This is why I want to do it. At some point it becomes like that. Prabhupada calls it spontaneous. We'll talk a little here. Let's see here. And this is interesting here. This is Prabhupada, there's the Jaya Radha Madhava song that people, sing at the beginning of classes generally, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. And Prabhupada, says here in 1971 in New York, he gave a little purport on that's recorded, and I have a transcript of it. And he says, the whole residents of Vrindavan, they love Krishna. They do not know anything else. This is all about, the Vrindavan pastimes. It says, they do not know whether Krishna is God or not. Neither are they very much harassed that I shall love Krishna if he is God. He may be God, or he may be whatever he is. It doesn't matter. But we love God. We love Krishna. He says, that's all. He says, that's called unalloyed love. And he mentions, that what happens there is that if you know, I think there's another, I think I have another slide that continues that. Yeah, he says, if Krishna is God, then I shall love him. This is conditional love, he says. So like in one sense, one of the arguments we get, which is a valid one, is that Krishna is God. He's created us. He's the supreme controller, the supreme everything. And so he deserves us to recognize that and do something in return. He's already given us the whole world and ourselves. So we actually owe him. And so we should do that. And that's a legitimate argument, but it's not and it may be okay for us at this point. But at some point when the when we become advanced on that path of the heart, then actually that notion of obligation blocks the heart. It blocks the heart. So the love of the Brijabasis, he says, he says, Krishna may be God or whatever he may be, but by his wonderful acts, the Brajavasi, they are thinking, oh, Krishna, he is very wonderful child. Maybe some demigod, maybe some demigod. So as the residents of Vrindavan, they love Krishna without any condition. Similarly, Krishna loves them without any condition, any motivation is what he's saying. Or anything. And so it's simply, the service is simply the satisfaction of their love. And Krishna is dealing with them out of his love. It says Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains pretty clearly that that in the background, the Brajavasis know Krishna is God, but when, especially when they meet him, he's just too sweet. They can't. It doesn't affect their mood. And he says that Krishna also forgets his divinity. He wants to come to the level of his devotees. It says his prema, his core energy, causes him to forget all of his omnipotence and omnipresence and omniscience, and just get into the pastime of love. Because also, if he feels himself to be so superior, he can't love purely either. He thinks, oh, he's kind to these poor small beings, but there he can feel the love fully. So it's just love that comes out of an attraction and appreciation for the other, and just continues to expand. That's how it's described. It expands eternally. That's what's offered to us. And Prabhupada here talks about how gives a little idea how you might begin to move in that direction. Because we're not at that level where we can act like the Brijabasis, and if we try to forget Krishna's God, it won't be very good for us. We need to know who he is right at this point. Our love isn't strong enough. We'll be inappropriately familiar with Krishna without having the requisite love to do so. So here it says, this is in the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 2. And Prabhupada says, for example, a person engaged in devotional service may be ordered to rise early in the morning and offer arati, which is a form of deity worship. In the beginning, by the order of his spiritual master, one rises early in the morning and offers arati, but then he develops real attachment. When he gets this attachment, he automatically tries to decorate the deity and prepare different kinds of dresses and thinks of different plans to execute his devotional service nicely. Although it is within the category of practice, this offering of loving service is spontaneous. So, I mean, one can just go and do the service. There's certain things you have to do, and just get it done. But here it says, because there's a feeling of attachment or a feeling of a special interest to Krishna, the heart is opening a little bit. You think, well, how can I do this better? Right? Instead of coming down and just doing the duty, but there's an increasing attachment for Krishna. It's not just a matter of following the rules. Like because there's a term that Prabhupada used that comes in it appears in the Nectar of Instruction, the Upadeshamrita, called niyama agraha, and it means two things because it's two words connected, niyama agraha, and it also could be niyama agraha. And so niyama are the rules of devotion, and agraha I think means to follow them, and agraha long means to neglect them. And when you combine the two, it's called shandi. When you connect the two Sanskrit words, both of those things are the same. There's still just a long a there, niyamagraha. So you can't tell whether the one word was agraha or agraha. And so it simultaneously means both things. You neglect following the practice, that won't help you, or you just go through the motions of doing it without being connected, without, Prabhupada says, without seeing how we're advancing, not seeing how our connection. So we think that just by doing the actions it will work, or if we think, I'm not gonna do the actions because there's a certain sadhana practice that helps us to express whatever connection we have with Krishna and make a connection with him that can nourish the heart. And so when I'm emphasizing the heart, I don't mean we should just sit around and think about what I feel about Krishna, but we should be doing the things that we do otherwise, but try to bring some more heart to it and keep revisiting that. So the two things have to be in place. If we're chanting Hare Krishna, then we should be thinking, how wonderful Krishna is to the extent that we know. So there's something there. We're being more present. The heart is being present, not just our ears and our tongue and our hands with the beats, but the heart should be present somehow, whatever we have to bring. And whatever little bit we can bring to it, Krishna appreciates that. Okay. Now here, and this is interesting here. This is from a lecture also in 1966 in 26 Second Avenue, a very early lecture, April 6, 1966. And Prabhupada says, everything is done. Everything is done so far our duties are concerned. There is a cause. I do this because I want this. So there is a cause and effect. But this sort of busyness, this sort of occupation, which leads you to the devotional service of the Lord, it has no cause, a hoitiki. It has no cause. Why it has no cause? Just like a lover, or say lover, beloved. He says, or even he says, set aside. He thinks that's a little complicated. He says, just like a mother, he says, a mother loves her child. There is no cause. She does not know why am I loving? Automatically, she loves. So here he's talking about moving from the one type of attitude to the other. And so when the cause becomes our attachment to Krishna, or our affection for Krishna, or our feeling of indebtedness to Krishna because he's so wonderful, then it moves more towards the lack of a motivation. The hetu is a cause or a motivation. And so he's making a distinction between the two paths. What else do we have here? And then it's interesting here because he uses the mother and son as like we have a mother's affection for Krishna, not necessarily in that mood, but he says like spontaneous like that for somebody whose heart is opening. But he says, I'm subordinate. This is also what was that? Is this a same lecture? I am subordinate to the Supreme Consciousness, and let me act according to the Supreme Consciousness without any cause, ahoitiki, without. Why I shall act, there is no such question. It is automatic. Just like a little son and the mother. The little son is automatically subordinate to the mother. Whatever the mother says, the child acts. The child, actually, he misspoke. The child is completely dependent. Similarly, as soon as we make our consciousness completely engaged in that service of the Supreme Consciousness, that is our liberated position. So, from the other side, because what happens when Krishna sees that there's some, even little bit of real feeling there, he helps us. And so here the metaphor is switched. He says that here in the first one, it was like we were like in the position of mother loving Krishna, but then here he's saying that we're trying to he says dovetail our limited consciousness with the supreme consciousness, and here Krishna guides us like a mother guides the child. And so Krishna he responds. Prabhupada says when when we approach Krishna, he approaches us, not in proportion, but out of proportion. He comes many. He says, we take one step towards Krishna, and Krishna takes 10 times, 10 steps towards us. He already has love for us, and so therefore he responds and he tries to help us. So if we have a little bit of that, he'll try to fan that spark with the same kind of like a mother's love. He'll guide us. And here Krishna mentions this thing, how he helps us, right? He says, those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. This is Bhagavad Gita 10 verse 10. And he carries on again in verse 11, to show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So if Krishna gets just a little smell, a little sniff of the real genuine affection for him, it doesn't, right now we're going to be mixed, but we start to feel a little something for Krishna. We begin to cultivate that a little bit. Krishna, he's really interested at that point. And then 1/3 one comes from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sri Krishna is the personality of Godhead who is the Paramatma, the super soul in everyone's heart. And the benefactor of the truthful devotee cleanses desire for material enjoyment. The word here is abhadra, which kind of just means everything inauspicious. Prabhupada kind of gives a specific translation there that cleanses the desire of material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. This is also, he helps us in so many ways. This is, he removes the abhadra. There's in the description of bhakti, especially of this type, it says that they use the metaphor of bhakti as a seed of a vine. And it's planted in the heart, and the first 2 leaves come out, and the first leaf removes all negativities, and the second one produces all positivities. So it's like if we have that genuine desire, even a small bit, Krishna's going to help to fan that spark. But we have to, in some way, be at least a little convinced that Krishna just in himself is the best destination. That we don't want something Krishna can give us. I mean, we can do that. And Krishna can give it, and something wonderful will happen. There's no harm in that whatsoever. But Krishna is offering himself. It says that prema, when it arises, is Krishna Karshni. It just attracts Krishna. To him, it's because with Krishna, what we feel is that Krishna is priceless. The devotees feel that Krishna is so priceless, and his love is so amazing. Even he wants to feel what it's like to be loved by Krishna. This is in this form of Lord Chaitanya, he's taking on the mood of Radharani. So he wants to see himself through the eyes of love. He wants to experience the love that his devotees have for him, what it's like to love him, but he also wants to experience what it's like to be loved by him when he takes on the mood of Radharani. And so the love, to experience his love, is priceless to the devotee. Krishna is priceless, but also Krishna, when he experiences the love of his devotees, he takes that to be priceless, and he is simply trying to pay that back with his love and increasing and increasing. So we have this opportunity, to have Krishna, to have his full love, and we can have the highest type of love that we can have. So this is something that's, I mean, we can understand that Krishna is all powerful, he's eternal, and he has all ability to think and to create and to understand. So he's created that for himself. So he's had eternity to perfect it. He has unlimited power, so he could have any other type of existence he wanted. He could change everything, himself and everything else. There's no limitations to what he can do. And right, he has the knowledge or the understanding to conceive of anything. So when he's landed on this particular thing, it's really, really, really good. And And in order to make it happen, he needs others, and we're invited. And so I think really that should really be something that that gets us excited. If it doesn't, that's okay. We can the other types of bhakti are also perfectly all right. But to me, it's just, it just kind of piques my interest. Wow, there really is a distinction there. I mean, hey, go to the spiritual world, live there eternally happily. I mean, there's definitely no harm in that. But like to be able to connect with Krishna's core reality is and be integral to that is just amazing. So anyway, so the next couple of times I'm going to try to, I'm thinking about this, like how we can begin to move in that direction. Because right now we don't have that love. That's a, full flowering of this seed. But how do we begin from where we're at? How do we begin to move towards this, connecting with Krishna from the heart? And what are the kind of things that are blocking that? And I mentioned a little bit today. I think the feeling that if we just know everything, that will be enough, or that if we just do enough things, that will be enough. I think those things are actually holding us back. And we really need to learn how to appreciate and feel something for Krishna. And it's not just an empty sentiment. I mean, Prabhupada sometimes talks about that bhakti is not just a mere sentiment, but we're talking something substantive that wants us, that will eventually help to fuel our actions. It's not just, oh yes, I love Krishna. No, it's got to be something. It's got to be something that that's substantial, or at least it's moving in that direction. So sometimes we so how do we begin to cultivate the heart? How do we begin to, and what are the other things that are blocking us from that? And I think there's a few things that are there. And so we're going to try to do that in the next couple of sessions and see what we can do with that, if we can make any headway there. So yeah, I guess that's what I got for you today. Let me stop the sharing, off the screen share, and yeah, turn it over to you if there's any comments or questions, complaints, suggestions, additions, subtractions, whatever you got. Bring it on. This is your time. The floor is yours.
I got a couple of pages of notes. I'll let somebody else go first. Or should I start?
I guess looks like you might as well get the ball rolling.
Okay. So it was interesting. Vishwanath, he's saying a Kama Mishra Bhakta, a Sakama Bhakta, Bhakta with its mixed, got some mixed material desires. He can go to Vaikuntha. He can attain.
Yeah.
He can attain Bhav and go to Vaikuntha.
No, he doesn't get Baba. They don't get Baba. It's the Jnana Mishra Bhakta that does that.
Okay,
the Karma Mishra doesn't get Baba. Well, so there's not deep affection for Krishna. It says they enjoy the happiness and powers. It's interesting in the early days, Prabhupada talks about this. I wonder if I can find this. He talks, because the word is Aishvarya, which we usually translate as opulence. But let me see if I can. I just ran across this a couple of times. I was looking through some of those early classes, and I ran to grab some of these quotes that kind of astonished me. And okay, oh boy, here we go. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. Yeah, he says Sarshti. This is a kind of he says Sarsti means to get the same opulence. As I've already explained, opulence. He gets all the opulence the Lord has got. He becomes so as good as Lord, becomes so powerful. This is called Sarsti. And then he says later on, he has even better. Where is it here?
It's a liberation. It's one of the five liberations.
Yeah, yeah, it's meaning, yeah, you have the same opulence, but he
Yeah,
translates it.
the five liberations are Vaikuntha liberations. They're Vaikuntha liberations.
Yeah, but he says he says here that he uses here as powerful. Where is this other one?
Right.
There's another one's even clearer. He says, um,
This
oh, here
is
it says
Vishwanath.
no, this is Prabhupada in 26 Second Avenue.
Prabhupada. Got it.
Because
Okay.
usually Prabhupada just talks about the Aishwarya's opulence here, but here he says we do not know,
Okay.
we have no conception that in our spiritual body how much we can become powerful. We do not know that. He says there is calculation. There is calculation that suppose God is 100% perfect. So when you get your spiritual body, you may not be as powerful as God, but almost near to God. You get 78%. You get 78% of the whole
Mm.
power. So
Right.
the so yeah
Yeah.
so
The
so the
jivas
yeah
can get that. Yeah.
yeah so just from the wishing something material for Krishna, I have this distress, relieve me of this problem, or I need this that I can't get on my own. Krishna, because he's so touched, even though we don't have so much heart for him, we just think, oh, Krishna's a nice guy, he can help me. So it's not the kind of relationship that would really take our hearts. Like if somebody else we know they're out to get something from you, we don't usually take that
Right.
to be so serious. But Krishna, his heart is so soft. He says, "Well, they came to me,
Right.
so I give them what they want, and then I give them something so much greater." This is how sweet Krishna is. So imagine if we approach Krishna with sweetness, how he's going to react to us. You see, he's so
Yeah.
happy with them.
Wealthy people are insecure. Uh, when somebody tries to make friends with them, they're wondering, is he after my money?
Yeah.
You know,
And of course, usually
and
it's
so
a genuine
Krishna, he's the
concern.
wealthiest, but he's not insecure. He's
Yeah,
Atmaram.
yeah,
He's not feeling that way,
yeah,
and
yeah,
he's just happy that a jiva turns towards him,
yeah.
and it's like a child, and
His heart
he's
is so
dealing
good.
with like that.
Yeah, his heart is so
Yeah.
sweet. It's so sweet. Well, you came to me, even though you just really want my stuff. But I love you, and so I give you even more than you asked. This is Krishna. So what if we approach him with some genuine affection?
Right.
What the response is going to be like? So I think
Well,
that was mind blowing.
if you call up those two slides of Vishwanath, I think you'll find also what I was shocked. I was shocked. I thought Baba was in the first
No,
comment.
that was for
Then
that was
the
for the
Jnana Mishra Bhakti. Then the
yeah.
Jnana Mishra Bhakti. I saw the word praying, and
No,
and and actually,
he said
was
on rare occasions, it says that with proper
okay.
association or that kind of stuff, it can happen. But generally, the Jnana Mishra Bhakti, the one who's looking for knowledge or liberation, and what they have is they have this really strong conception of God as all powerful. Of course, God is all powerful,
Right, right,
but
right.
it doesn't make their heart so soft, right? Because
Mm.
they feel how much greater God is, how much more powerful. So there's a respectful distance in Dante's Paradiso, his vision of the spiritual world or of heaven. That's what he has people being like. They're kind of just starstruck in the presence of God for eternity. Like, whoa, blows their mind
Right,
forever.
that's
And
Aishwarya.
they have
Yeah,
affection, and they have affection. They have Baba at the beginning
on
of that kind of
reverence,
love.
and yeah,
Yeah. But
and
they really feel,
there's some
wow, he's
affection.
wonderful. They still think he's wonderful, but it's not the
Right.
same. It's not the same connection. It's still, I mean, it's great. But compared to our lives now, it's great.
These days, I've extended from Kartik to Damodar prayers, and those prayers are perfect, Siddhanta. Uh, so he's drowning the inhabitants of Gokula in pools of ecstasy with his pastimes, childhood pastimes, and he's revealing to those devotees who worship his opulence and majesty that he is only conquered by devotees whose pure love is free from any conception of awe and reverence.
Yeah. So fully, I would say it's probably accurate to say fully conquered, but he's touched by everybody else. He gives so much to everybody
Yeah.
else. He appreciates everything. But there it says it's Krishna Karshini that attracts him, it draws him in. It's like a magnet, comes to them
Right.
and wants to please them. So he's only there completely wholehearted when we are also wholehearted. But he's not like,
Also,
oh, he's not like, oh, you guys aren't so great. He sets everybody up really well. He gives them more than
I
they
was
deserve.
surprised to see Sukadev, but it's got to be true that he's a Shanta Bhakta.
But he went to prema. So that was the thing. He was, when he was born, right? He was born. He was
Right.
already liberated.
Brahmanandi.
So
Right.
part of his deal is a lila too, because he was fully Brahmananda, fully satisfied, and so just went to the forest into the wilderness. But then his father, when he was composing the Bhagavatam, he sent his students out into the forest to chant the verses.
Right.
And so he heard the verse,
And he was attracted. Right.
where
Right.
especially the verse where Putana, was trying to kill him, as a baby. And but she was trying to do it by she poisoned her breast and was trying to breastfeed him to kill him. And of course, but poison doesn't work so well in Krishna. And he killed her by sucking her life air out through her breast. But she became a mother in the spiritual world, because her past history was interesting. She was her past life, she was the younger sister, or the sister of Bali Maharaj, who Krishna as Vamanadev stole everything from him. And so at first she saw him and says, oh, I want to have a child like that. He's so wonderful. And then when he cheated her brother, she said, I want to kill that guy. So
he took everything. He took their wealth.
Yeah,
he took everything away.
And even Prabhupada said this was not begging, this was cheating. But it was an exchange of love with Bali. So Bali was happy to do that. But externally, it seemed like that Krishna had just cheated him out of everything. And then so she was angry. Right. So she had both of those desires mixed in the next life. She wanted to kill him, but also she still had to want to be the mother. So
this motherly affection.
Yeah. Right. So she had to fail to kill him and give up her body, and that got rid of that thing. And then she became like one of his mothers in the spiritual world. So both things happened. Krishna's so sweet that way, And by coming, he used the her wanting to kill him as part of the Leela too. So it was good. It stirred things up in Vrindavan. So it was beautiful. So when he heard that, when Shukadev heard that, it just blew his mind. He realized there was something beyond full satisfaction. Atma Rama, there's something more powerful. He was running, and the students were like, he was afraid because he had all the long matted hair. He wasn't taking care of himself in the forest, and they said some ghost was chasing us. No, bring that ghost home. So they said, get that guy. I know who he is. They were like, wow, this madman or ghost is coming out of the forest.
Have you read somewhere that Sukadev was Radharani's parrot in Braj?
It says that some places, yeah. Yeah, so therefore, that was his that was his nature anyway. But it was a leela to show that the transcendent leelas are beyond just regular liberation or merging with the light and that kind of stuff. That if somebody is in contact with that, it just blows them away, and they're like, wait, I'm missing out. I am perfectly satisfied, just fully prasanatma, fully satisfied, peaceful and fully satisfied. And then this comes along and says, wait, this is making my heart expand. And so there's attraction there. So it was like a little litmus test here. Here's somebody who's fully, it seems like many spiritual programs are looking to find peace. It's a huge upgrade from our current situation. And so that was a pastime that shows that there's something even beyond peace. The spiritual love is something more powerful than that.
So the cultivation of the heart, it's not quantity, it's also about quality.
It's going to happen. You can't fake it. You can't fake it. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. It has to be authentic, it has to be real. Because Krishna is seeing you from the inside. He's a super soul in the heart. He knows what you're thinking and feeling. So you can't fool him. And he wants the real deal. Even if it's a little tiny bit of the real deal is better than a whole lot of fake.
Mhm.
You know?
Right.
So we're going to talk about
And
it. It has to be real. Authenticity is huge. You can be a tiny little
and
bit of it.
to just have a desire, even, Vaisheshika's Prabhu's motto is fan the spark. So
Yeah.
there's, I mean, it's we're Nitya Siddha, we're Das, we're Krishna's servants. That's our real, like, everybody is that. So, but it was interesting that someone can be in some practice of sadhana, some Vaidhi marg, but then they can have a desire that's driving that, and that desire can actually make them, in one sense, liberated if
Yeah.
they've accepted Krishna as their goal of life. Srila Srila Maharaj, he said something that struck us. A man can be known by his ideal.
Mm.
So if you have an aspiration, that's who you are.
Yeah.
That's where you're going,
Yeah.
right? So,
So if we have a
and
little
that
bit,
could mean
we,
if it's fixed,
yeah,
if you're nishta, if you're fixed on that, you're basically liberated, even
yeah.
though you're still entangled in some ways. You're looking to the other side. You're looking towards the transcendental plane. You're
So,
trying for
so,
that.
so Krishna has a his radar is out there, and a
Mhm.
little hint of actual of this actual appreciation for Krishna for no other reason.
Mhm.
A little hint of it, even like a little interest in it, is something that Krishna will perk right up. Like, and then he's on that to try to fan that spark, you know. So it's really
Have you
powerful in
ever
that way.
heard this quote
Yes.
by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati?
Let's I
Okay.
have a hand up here,
Somebody
Susan.
else want to
Yeah.
jump in?
Yeah. Let's
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask because you say just of the desire. So does Krishna enjoys devotion through serving and loving other human beings or living beings as recognizing them being or having part of Krishna inside, like
yeah, if
being serving?
we should see all, see other beings as also being loved by Krishna, and so if we understand it in that way, then yeah, we should be persons who are concerned with others, you know but it's helpful if we understand it in that way, that here's somebody who's like me, is dear to Krishna, and so and what can I do to benefit them the most. Definitely.
I heard
Anybody?
from, okay, anybody else?
Yeah, this
I'm
let me
talking to,
we're
there's
getting a
somebody
little
else.
bit, we're past 8 o'clock here, so I just want to see if I'm happy to have you keep rolling, but if somebody else has got something, I want to give them a chance.
So we talked a little bit about this earlier today, but it sounds to me like this kind of liberation that can happen while we're alive is kind of the loss of distraction from aversion and attraction. But nonetheless, that's still not what we're looking for here, because it sounds to me like love has to come first. And then if liberation comes out of that, that's fine. But this love for Krishna is the thing that we're actually looking for. And if it's genuine, then it doesn't matter whether you're liberated or not. And I think that's what it's kind of hinting at in Bhagavad Gita 9:30, when
Yeah.
it talks about this kind of idea that, well, you can still be not a thoroughly great person. I won't put it in Prabhupada's words, the most abominable acts, but I think we should live to be better than that. But still, Krishna sees you loving him, and he's willing to forgive almost anything, it sounds like.
He understands. I mean, he understands this is a process, and
Mhm.
so if we have I said, we have just a little seed of genuine feeling for him and desire for him, that he's going to help us work through it. He's going to be very patient with us and that kind of stuff. And liberation is a really broad term,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
And it may also just mean that, you know, you're on that path to that. This is going to happen now. It's a done deal. You know, it may take a little time for that, but it's already now. You're set. But there's different kinds of liberation. It's a very broad term. And so he's kind of puts it like, you know, yeah, there's some consistency there, you know, some super steadiness. So you wouldn't see too much of that, you know, but it's you can have liberation without that kind of love.
Right.
And you can be on the path towards that kind of love and have a lot of faults. And you'd prefer to be that than somebody who's, you know, like you know, Shukadeva Goswami before he hears the Bhagavatam. You can be fully liberated. And, you know, and I mean, it's a fine thing to be, but we can be, you know, as we are now, you know, a mixed bag of things, and have some, at least some little faith in that, in that path, and that puts us in a better condition.
Well, I'm really looking forward to your next classes, because I think that idea of how we can develop more love, that's basically what I've been concentrating on. I'd love to learn how to develop that more, and it being more genuine, so that I feel that connection.
Yeah, me too.
We're all here for that.
Yeah. All right. So, Vidagda, anything else before we go? I don't want to kind of. You had something.
You know, I could go on forever. You know, we could fill up another 15 minutes or something, but I guess the time is up.
You think you're good? Okay. All right. Nothing burning. We can bring it back to us next time.
One thing.
Okay, give us one more.
We, you know, because we're in this subject matter, what is our attraction? We should all reflect. We all have our story, how I came to Krishna, right? So Krishna is full of tricks, and he's drawn us in. So we're all here because he's done that, right? So we're kind of celebrating that. But if you can, this is from Sridhar Maharaj, if you can reflect on what first attracted you, you can take that thread all the way back to Godhead. And so on the surface, to make it clear, I'm going to explain his, you know, how he came to that, you know, how he arrived at Lord Chaitanya. So he's a born Brahmin, and he's no Sanskrit, and he's grown up with he actually gives his aunties credit for telling him stories from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And he was attracted to Ram when he was growing up. And he was hearing, you know, everybody around Krishna's crying. He didn't want to know about that. He wasn't attracted to Krishna. So then in his college days, he reads a book about Lord Chaitanya and his life and teachings. And he was so moved that he placed his head at the feet of Lord Chaitanya. So then he found his guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Just needed someone to represent that. So then after some time goes by, he's thinking, how did I do that? How did I transition from Ram to Lord Chaitanya? So he's thinking, what attracted him, Ram Leela? And he said it was the renunciation and the dedication of the Leela. So Ram, he's about making all his subjects and devotees happy, and he's willing to do any sacrifice, personal sacrifice, to accomplish that. So that renunciation, the dedication, well, he found the same renunciation and dedication in the form of Lord Chaitanya, in the mood of Radharani. It was Radharani that drew him in with that same renunciation and dedication. And that's how he crossed over. And he made his peace with Krishna after that.
Interesting, huh?
That was Radharani, right? And that's the Gaudiya. That's really the Gaudiya. You know, they're focused more on Radharani than they are in Krishna.
Yeah,
That's the Gaudiya line.
Yeah,
you know, So the gopis, that's the highest, from Madhavendra Puri on, and then Lord Chaitanya
Yeah,
and Vishnu.
I
It's
can't
all
remember.
Gopi Baba, all this stuff.
Yeah, I can't remember who said that. I don't know if it may have even been Siddhanta Saraswati said that we only care about Krishna because Radharani likes him.
Yeah, that was, yeah, one Maharaj was doing a Dandavat Parikram around Govardhan, and somebody commented how much devotion he has. But Bhakti Siddhanta says, well, I know their devotion is for Krishna, but our devotion is different. Our devotion is for Radharani.
Yeah, that's of course that's
And because they like Krishna because, right, no, because Radharani, we like Krishna because Radharani likes Krishna.
yes,
Something
that's
like
yeah.
that.
We don't care for him otherwise.
He likes
Yeah,
Krishna. They like
Yeah.
Krishna because
yeah, because Radharani likes
it
him.
was I can't say it right,
Yeah,
but it's something like
Yeah.
that.
I mean this is beyond our station here, but that's where we're headed. We want to be headed
Right.
to start
But
somewhere.
even where we are, we can think, what did attract, think
Yeah.
about what attracted
Yeah.
you.
And what has
for me, it
inspired
was
us even
Bhagavatam.
afterwards, and even after, yeah, me too.
Bhagavatam.
Me too was the thing. Yeah, that was the
It's
thing.
like, what?
Mhm.
What is, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
This is,
Yeah.
I didn't even know I was looking for this. And this is what I was
Yeah.
looking for.
Yeah.
There's so much beauty and charm that it offered a lot of solutions, a lot of answers, but it was just amazing coming in contact with Bhagavatam, especially first Canam.
Yeah. I had a similar experience. So yeah, all the things that have inspired us, I think that we need to take an inventory of that and remember those times, So anyway, so yeah, we'll see what we can do with that in the next couple of sessions, and give some suggestions, and some of them may resonate with you, and if they don't worry about it. The ones that, if any of them work, then you can give them a try. So, all right. Well, thank you all. We'll see you next week. We'll stop the
Thank you.
recording.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.